Africa is a continent of ideas and creativity. We have a lot to say about where the world is going and how we would like it to get there. Hello everyone, Sanbonani Dumelang. On behalf of the University of Cape Town, I look forward to welcoming and hosting you.
Wow. Hello, everybody. Hello, Alma. Odumela, Molweni, Sanbonani, Hamjani Nyote. I greet you in 4 of South Africa's 11 official languages: English, Afrikaans, isiXhosa, isiZulu. And I also introduced Kiswahili, which has been adopted by the African Union as an official language for the continent. In fact, it's an official working language at the AU, which is great, and I think it deserves really, thank you for that hand clap, because we've had languages from elsewhere in the world, mainly in Europe, and it's sort of normal, and some people frown to hear that an African language is official in the African Union. For centuries, Africa has welcomed different European languages, and now we are doing the same for the languages of the continent. And the significance of this moment is not just cultural. It also demonstrates the kind of thinking that is significant within interdisciplinary research and design thinking. If we say design thinking has to include all voices, we've got to be aware that some voices, some people might not be fluent in the European languages. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein said, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." He suggested that language not only makes communication possible, but by making the effort to learn other languages, we may also be diversifying our own thought processes. So language is important to how we think. Some experts go far as to suggest that our perception of the world is shaped by the language or languages that we speak, that people who speak different languages will have different world views. So in fact, you are impoverished if you speak only one language or you only engage with people who speak your language only. And in this context of design thinking, introducing and welcoming other languages is important because it will introduce us to different or a variety of worldviews. If we take if we take that concept a little further, we could say that to have a more complete view of the world and our place in it, everyone should make an effort to learn at least one new language. And I know when I say that, people say, well, I speak Afrikaans. Well, try something else that's indigenous to the continent. In much the same way, interdisciplinary approaches are critical for design thinking. This is because they help us not only to understand the problem from different academic and non-academic viewpoints, but also to rephrase that problem and describe the different factors that are contributing to it. Every discipline has its own vocabulary, its own language for explaining the world. The wicked problems we all face as human beings have arisen from the spectrum of different contributing factors. And to understand each factor, how it contributes to a particular problem, and how that factor intersects with all the other contributing factors, we need to open ourselves to the language and thought processes of different branches of science. In other words, experts in different fields need to know not only the intricacies of their own disciplines, they also need to know how to communicate with colleagues who have a similar level of expertise in their own respective disciplines. This is not new. It's not a new idea in modern research. The practice of interdisciplinary approaches to the world's wicked problems involves what Professor of Science Eric Stengler refers to as the interaction between the communication of science and the science of communication. He says this interaction helps to define the landscape as well as an essential framework for different disciplines to cooperate on a shared problem. Design thinking and interdisciplinary science both provide a similar landscape that disrupts the traditional patriarchal patterns of academic and industrial knowledge. The landscape replaces the competitiveness of individual researchers with what Hasso-Plattner says is, and I quote, an essential cultural change, close quote. That essential cultural change that incorporates habits of cooperation such as creative confidence, curiosity, collaboration, and a trial and error attitude. Design thinking methodology can help to expand the focus of science to incorporate not just knowledge, but also the attitudes that guide how we use that knowledge. Like interdisciplinary research, the practice of design thinking is centered on teamwork that aims to identify action to solve a problem or meet a need. It encourages empathy. In other words, how we use our scientific knowledge needs to be guided by the effects on other human beings and our environment. I'm sure you can just imagine how the world would have been like if we had taken this approach many years ago. Maybe we wouldn't be dealing with the challenges of climate change that we're dealing with right now. By working across disciplines, we build respect for diversity and the different perspectives that each discipline brings to a problem and its solution. At the same time, the process of interaction between different disciplines builds a type of democratic approach that might have been missing if one discipline dominated the discussion. Design thinking is not just an exercise in discussing a particular problem. Its primary focus is to create tangible actions that we can measure and observe, to test their effectiveness in meeting the desired goal. And this is the same target an interdisciplinary research team aims for. Researchers are also accustomed to the design thinking mindset of embracing uncertainty, taking risks, and being surprised by the outcome. Professor Arnoud Malan, our colleague here at UCT, the South African Research Chair in Industrial Computational Fluid Dynamics in UCT's Mechanical Engineering Department, points out that academics have the freedom to fail. By the way, Arnoud was talking about this when he was challenged as to why this research that he does should happen at universities and not in industry. And he said, well, academics have the freedom to fail, to learn from mistakes and try out new ideas, a freedom that is often missing from the profit-driven corporate sector. And history is full of inventions that were created by such surprises. Interdisciplinary approaches to problem solving help us to cultivate that spirit of adventure in ourselves and in future generations, to be brave enough to lead with curiosity and design thinking, as design thinking encourages. And I guess what Arnoud also says indicates why it's important to have the D school within a university and visible in the way that this D school is. If you had the D school standing alone somewhere or in industry, perhaps the culture of curiosity, of getting in and exploring, and the freedom to fail, not just the freedom to pursue the questions, wouldn't exist. All scientists, of course, begin as curious students. By working across disciplines, we rediscover and use the curiosity of our earlier experiences and education, and that engages our creative energy as well. In engaging mindfully with the process of curiosity, inviting diversity, aiming for action, we move towards an explicit design process that can help to guide us through the complexities of the wicked problems we need to address. The process of problem solving becomes not just a task to be accomplished. It also helps us to evolve new ways of approaching the problem, and thinking about what we know and how we use what we know. And one example of interdisciplinary problem solving is the biomedical field, where engineers develop equipment to solve problems that arise in healthcare. For example, a young patient who needs to use an inhaler may not have the strength in the hand to squeeze the inhaler properly. So our division of biomedical engineering at UCT teaches not only engineering, but also the importance of teamwork, curiosity, engagement with the patient or the medical staff who presented the problem. In fact, we have a master's degree in our biomedical engineering program where students don't take an exam. Instead, they are required to develop a solution to a problem that meets all the criteria of the client. So at the beginning of the semester, they are given a problem, and the task throughout is to find a solution, work with a diversity of people to find the solution, understanding the needs of the patients, understanding the problem from the perspective of clinicians, and a successful solution means a passing grade. And this is what we would like to see in most of our programs. Assessment, as we know, the pandemic or the lockdown showed us that assessment as we know it, pen and paper, doesn't always do what's needed. And this way of assessing assesses students, of teaching and learning and assessing, assesses students, but also introduces them to the fact that the world's wicked problems cannot be solved just with one perspective from one discipline. As researchers, we have learned the importance of involving local people in our outreach and clinical work in the communities, because we cannot understand the full implications of a problem and its solution without the insights of people who live with that problem every day. In a similar sense, the underlying mission of design thinking is to make a difference in the world. It encourages us to view humanity not just within a particular discipline, but within the context of the wider environment that we share with other species and the systems that create that environment: the atmosphere, the biosphere, the hydrosphere, and the geosphere. As we are learning to our great cost, none of these systems stands alone. To truly understand a specific academic discipline and how it fits into the world, we need to learn to understand its relationship to other or all the other academic disciplines. And this is why UCT's African Climate and Development Initiative focuses on engaging a collective response across different disciplines and different institutions in Africa to the challenge of climate change, to coordinate and bring together resources to enable inter- and multi- and transdisciplinary research for teaching and learning and sustainable development across Africa and beyond. Our challenge as a species is to learn to think and act holistically. We know the costs of not doing that. We need to learn to live in balance with the world instead of exercising careless dominion over it and over each other. We need to understand an innovation ecosystem that respects the relationship of different systems that make up our world and the sciences that helps to understand it. We are living in a time of upheaval. University students are demanding changes in how their education is financed, how higher education reflects the African view of the world, as well as the views of other cultures. At the same time, we are living the changes that the fourth industrial revolution is bringing to the world. As educators, we need to prepare our young people to lead in a time of change and uncertainty. We need to instill in them the same kind of mindset that design thinking encourages curiosity, teamwork, an appreciation of diversity, and a focus on leading change to unleash their own talents and those of other people to help build a fair and just society. One way we are cultivating this new kind of thinking is by opening up programs of study that draw from different faculties and disciplines. For instance, engineering students are required to take an elective course in the Faculty of Humanities to broaden their capacity to cope with complex social questions that they may be exposed to in their professional practice, skills that students will take forward in the core courses. And we are the only university in the country who expects engineering students to do that. And our Department of Information Technology offers a program that trains students in faculties like humanities and commerce to use digital technology in their chosen fields of work. We also focus on supporting an entrepreneurial mindset in our students to seek out ways to use their education to solve the kinds of problems they see in their communities. Africans especially are finding ways to bring creative solutions in their communities. And the solutions created by African researchers, entrepreneurs, and innovators can also have an impact in other parts of the world. We have a lot of examples here at UCT where we've come with innovations that the world has taken up. A good example that I like making is the one about rheumatic heart disease, which manifests differently in the global north, where it affects people who are a little mature than it happens on the African continent. In the African continent, it affects children. And the normal way, or the innovation that scientists in the global north came up with many years ago, is to replace heart valves with artificial heart valves that are made of animal tissue. And when they put them, they replace the valves with these artificial valves on the continent. It emerged that, in fact, on the continent, the patient outlives the artificial valves. It doesn't last. And so our scientists came up with an innovation of artificial valves made out of polymer material. And as you can imagine, it includes colleagues in the Faculty of Health Sciences, the clinicians, cardiologists, and chemists working together to find this innovation. And we have it here at UCT at one of our startups. And now scientists elsewhere in the world are saying, wow, we can give up our own and start using yours because our innovation can outlive the patient rather than the other way around. And this is why it's so meaningful to have this Decon Festival here at UCT, the first design thinking conference on the continent of Africa, held at the same time as we open Africa's first purpose-built design thinking building, D-School Africa, on UCT's middle campus. Bringing the D-School to Africa opens the possibility of developing a more diverse application of design thinking and seeing how design thinking translates in different cultural, linguistic, and socioeconomic conditions. I expect D-School Africa to grow, not only in its reach into the continent, but also in terms of the substance that African thinking brings to problem solving and leading change in Africa. So Richard, my challenge to you as you lead this D-School is that always look around who's in the building. If they all look like you, smell like you, pray like you, eat everything that you do, if you are never surprised about their being, it means we are missing out. And that's the power of this space, to welcome the many different people and ways of being, doing, and seeing. Our perceptions and experiences can contribute to a more holistic view of the world and to efforts to address our wicked global problems, especially within the context of the developing world. We have centuries of experience of working from a place of discomfort. That discomfort has built up our creativity. As you know, you heard last night that I was in Geneva, and I'm sure there are European colleagues in the room. I mean, my fellow vice-chancellors from Germany and around Switzerland, Geneva in particular, said to me, we have lost, in Geneva they said, we have lost 20% of our power because the nuclear plants in France need repair. And so load shedding is the order of the day. And of course, in Germany, it's worse because they're getting their power from Europe, and so they can't get it anymore, and so it's very difficult. Not only that, but they have to deal with the protests of people who are saying, please, just leave Russia alone, we want the power. And on my last day in Geneva, there was a protest and the trains were not working. And the former president of the Confederation of Switzerland said to me, I'm going to be biking to the conference. I said, welcome to the real world. We can teach you how to do that. We've been doing for many years. So the discomfort that we have felt over the years, as much as it's a disadvantage, it has built up our creativity. It has led our research and educational institutions to focus on developing science that is socially responsive to the many needs of African people and African communities. Throughout our history, when different cultures met, one tended to dominate. And that is the history of colonialism. Design thinking takes a different approach by creating a platform for different cultures, disciplines, languages, if you will, to have an equal footing and to co-lead in solving the problems that we face. Of course, we are introducing Swahili, and my hope, as a course, as a module at UCT, my hope is that in this building, in time, not only will we hear people talking isiZulu, isiXhosa, but we will hear people also speaking Kiswahili. Of course, we are the only African university that is bold, South African university, that is bold enough to do that, because we are Africa. In a similar way, interdisciplinary research and teaching creates a broad platform for experts and students to work together by learning together, by being curious together, exploring together, and sharing from their own experience and specialist knowledge. It is an excellent way to approach solutions to the problems we have created. And it is an excellent way to train new generations to avoid creating similar problems in the future. You know, I've been reading in terms of what environmental scientists and nutritionists are saying, where can we get protein given the challenges that we are facing with environmental sustainability. And I read a paper of a scientist who says we're going to have to eat insects. And then I thought, what's new? I am turning 56 next month, but I grew up eating insects, going into grass, taking locusts, and eating them. That's what we did, because we, as African people, certainly my culture of the Batswana, Bakhatla, Bamoche, that's what we did. And I thought, that's not new. People in Limpopo are eating mopani worms. We have always lived with the environment as an extension of ourselves, understanding that we take care of it and it will take care of us. That was destroyed because being African was never accepted into the space of knowledge. And knowledge that will have sustained the world, that could have saved the world. African voices and African thinking was silenced. The D school is a place where that thinking will not be silenced. We have destroyed the world by silencing that way of being, because that's the sustainable way of being. That will not be silenced in the D school. And I have hope that if we can do that, then new generations will avoid creating similar problems as we have created it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the conference.